The distress signal was weak, barely a whisper against the cosmic silence, but its message was unmistakable. A planet-wide evacuation. A race on the brink. And no one coming to help. Commander Elias Voss stared at the transmission flickering on the screen of the UNS Valor's bridge. The alien voice trembled with desperation. "We beg of you. If there is anyone who can hear this, please, help us." His gut tightened. He already knew the answer before he turned to his crew. "Any other fleets responding?" Lieutenant Carson's expression was grim. "None, sir. The signal's been transmitting for days. The Galactic Council wrote them off." Voss exhaled slowly, glancing back at the holographic display. The planet, Ilaris, hung in the void, once a thriving homeworld of the peaceful Yilthari, now marked for extinction. A massive fleet was bearing down on it. Not a rescue fleet. An extermination fleet. And every so-called civilized species had chosen to stand aside and watch. Voss clenched his jaw. The ship AI confirmed the analysis. There was no tactical advantage in intervening. No resources to gain. No strategic alliances to be formed. This was a dead-end fight. The smart move was to turn away. But humanity had never been known for making the smart move. He straightened, turning to his crew. "We're not leaving them to die." A ripple of tension ran through the bridge. They were one ship. One vessel against an armada. It wasn't just a bad idea, it was outright suicidal. And yet, no one objected. Because they were human. And that meant something. "Lieutenant Carson, get me a direct link to the Yilthari leader," Voss ordered. "Helm, plot a course for Ilaris." Full burn. Silence hung for a moment, then the bridge exploded into motion. Orders confirmed, systems engaged, thrusters ignited. And in that moment Elias Voss knew. They were about to do the impossible. The dying world. The UNS Valor tore through space at breakneck speed, pushing its engines to the limit. Within hours, Ilaris loomed ahead, a planet scarred by war, its once green surface marred with burning cities and crumbling towers. The Yilthari were losing. The enemy fleet, a ruthless coalition of conquerors known as the Rothak Dominion, had encircled the planet, cutting off every escape route. Their massive warships hung in low orbit, launching relentless orbital bombardments. Voss opened a direct link to the Yilthari capital. A grainy image appeared, a reptilian figure with deep amber eyes, scales dulled with age and sorrow. "I am Zarn, elder of the Yilthari," the alien rasped, disbelief flickering in his gaze. You are human." "That's right," Voss confirmed. "And we're here to help." Zarn exhaled sharply. "Why? No one else came." "The council said we are not worth the risk." Voss's expression hardened. "Yeah. Well, we don't answer to the council." Zarn studied him, searching for deceit, but found none. The old alien's voice cracked. "Then, you are truly our last hope." Voss nodded. "And we're not letting you go down without a fight." The impossible choice. The enemy fleet outnumbered them 50-1. Engaging in direct combat was suicide. But humanity had never won by playing fair. Voss turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Singh. "Give me options." She frowned at the data streaming in. "If we fight, we die. If we don't fight, the Yilthari die. Only way we change that equation is by making them hesitate." "Fear?" Voss asked. "Fear," she confirmed. A slow grin spread across Voss's face. "Then let's remind the galaxy why you don't back a human into a corner." He opened the ship-wide comms. "All hands prepare for engagement. We're about to make history." The first strike. The Valor surged forward, weapons primed. The Rothak fleet barely acknowledged them at first. One lone human vessel against an armada was laughable. Until they fired. The Valor's first barrage wasn't aimed at the Rothak fleet directly. Instead, Voss targeted their communications array. The enemy's command network scrambled. Orders broke down. Confusion rippled through their ranks. And that was all the opening they needed. Voss gave the second order. "Deploy the ghosts." From the Valor's underbelly, dozens of unmanned drone fighters swarmed out, each carrying an AI-controlled decoy signature. The Rothak suddenly found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be an entire human battle fleet. Panic spread. The Rothak had studied humanity before. They knew humans didn't fight wars conventionally. Humans fought dirty. Humans made nightmares real. And now they had no idea how many ships they were really up against. Voss smirked. "They're hesitating." Singh nodded. "We need a final blow to push them over the edge." Voss turned to comms. "Open a channel. Broadcast this to the entire fleet." A moment later, his voice boomed across the system. "This is Commander Elias Voss of the United Nations Fleet. We have come for the Ylthri. If you retreat now you will live. If you stay, I promise you this, humanity does not forgive. And we do not forget." Silence. Then, the Rothak's lead battleship powered up its primary cannon. A clear answer. They weren't backing down. Voss exhaled. "All right then." He turned to his crew. "Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." Cliffhanger, a doomsday move. The Rothak opened fire, plasma lances screaming toward the Valor. Voss didn't flinch. "Brace for impact." Explosions rocked the hull. The ship shuddered, but the shields held, for now. Carson paled. "Sir, we won't survive another direct hit like that." Voss nodded. "We won't have to." He tapped the console, activating the last resort. Behind him, on the main screen, the planet of Valaris shimmered, until a massive gravitational anomaly bloomed at the edge of the battlefield. The Rothak ships hesitated. Confusion rippled through their ranks. One of their commanders finally recognized what they were seeing. A human gravity bomb. A device so dangerous, so unpredictable, that even humanity had banned its use. Voss's voice was calm as he spoke. "You have 1 minute to leave this system, or none of us leave at all." The Rothak fleet froze. Because they suddenly realized. The humans weren't bluffing. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. The massive Rothak fleet hung in orbit, dozens of warships locked in a silent standoff with the UNS Valor. Every screen on the bridge displayed the same image, the swirling anomaly of the gravity bomb, a forbidden human weapon now primed and ready. A single wrong move and the battlefield would become a graveyard. Elias Voss stood unmoving, his fingers resting lightly on the console. 50 seconds, he announced coldly. His voice was calm. Deadly. "Make your decision." On the comms, the Ylthri Elder Zarn whispered, "What have you done?" Voss didn't answer. His attention was locked on the enemy fleet, waiting for their response. The Rothak were conquerors. But they were not suicidal. A full 7 seconds passed before the first Rothak vessel, one of their smaller destroyers, began to break formation, slowly pulling away from the blockade. Then another. And another. It was working. And then, "Sir." Incoming transmission from the Rothak flagship. Carson shouted. Voss nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the image of High Warlord Korthas appeared. The Rothak commander was a towering reptilian figure, his battle-scarred scales gleaming under the dim glow of his warship's bridge. His eyes burned with fury. "You dare threaten a Dominion fleet?" Korthas snarled. His voice was like grinding stone. Voss met his gaze without flinching. "No," he said evenly. "I promised you a choice. Retreat and you live. Stay and no one survives." Korthas bared his fangs. "You humans, you are insane." Voss let a slow wolfish grin spread across his face. "We prefer unpredictable." The turning point. For a moment, it seemed as if Korthas would yield. His claws flexed, his expression flickering with uncertainty. And then his eyes narrowed. "Humans are liars," he growled. "You would not doom yourselves for a species that is not your own." Voss's heart pounded. Korthas was calling his bluff. Before he could respond, a Rothak battleship suddenly surged forward, its massive plasma cannons charging up a full-power shot, directly at the Valor. Voss reacted instantly. "Fire. Now." The Valor's weapons roared to life, but they weren't aiming for the battleship. Instead, they detonated the gravity bomb. The storm breaks. The battlefield erupted into chaos. A shockwave of gravitational distortion tore through space, sending every ship, human, Rothak, and Ylthri alike, spiraling out of control. Voss barely managed to grip the nearest console as the Valor was yanked violently sideways, warning sirens blaring across the bridge. The artificial gravity flickered, and several crew members were hurled from their stations before emergency clamps re-engaged. On the main screen, the Rothak fleet was in complete disarray. Several of their ships were colliding with each other, thrown off course by the sheer force of the gravitational anomaly. Fires bloomed in the void as smaller vessels were crushed or torn apart by the sudden shift in forces. But the Valor had one advantage: they had prepared for this. "Helm, execute counter-thrust maneuver. Now." Voss barked. The ship's thrusters roared to life, burning against the gravity storm, stabilizing their course even as the Rothak ships continued to spiral. Then through the chaos, Carson's voice cut through. "Sir, enemy reinforcements incoming." Voss snapped his head toward the sensor feed. A second Rothak fleet had just arrived. And they weren't hesitating. betrayed and outnumbered. The new fleet wasted no time. Hundreds of enemy fighters poured into the battlefield, weaving between the crippled warships. Their target was clear, the Valor and the Ylthri planet below. Shields at 40% and dropping. Singh reported. Voss clenched his fists. They had bought seconds, but now they were outnumbered worse than before. And the Rothak weren't playing games anymore. They were going to wipe them out. Options. Voss demanded. Singh's face was grim. Only one. We run, or we die. Voss gritted his teeth. If they ran, the Ylthri would be slaughtered. But if they stayed, the Valor would be vaporized in minutes. Unless... Voss's mind raced. They couldn't win. Not conventionally. But if they couldn't win the battle, they could still win the war. He turned to Carson. Patch me through to the Ylthri High Command. All frequencies. Seconds later, Zarn's terrified face flickered onto the screen. Commander, the enemy. I know, Voss interrupted. Listen carefully. You need to evacuate your entire species. Now. Zarn's eyes widened in horror. That is impossible. We have no fleet, no ships to... Voss cut him off again. You do now. He turned to his crew. We're going to steal the enemy's ships. The heist of a lifetime. The bridge fell silent. Carson's mouth opened slightly. Sir, what? Voss's eyes burned with determination. We can't destroy their fleet. But we can take it from them. Singh's hands trembled over her console. You're suggesting we hijack an entire Rothak armada? Voss nodded. And we're going to do it right now. The daring plan. The plan was reckless. Insane. Which meant it was perfect. Singh pulled up the fleet schematics. The Rothak warships are networked. Their command structure relies on centralized authentication. If we can breach their fleet's coordination system, we can override their controls, Voss finished. Turn their fleet against them. Carson paled. Sir, that's a level 1 war crime. Voss smirked. Good thing we stopped caring about Galactic Council rules 20 minutes ago. The plan had to work. It was their only chance. Singh, can you do it? She swallowed then nodded. I'll need to get closer to one of their dreadnoughts. Their security protocols are tight, but if we breach one... Voss turned to the helm. Then get us in close. The Valor surged forward, diving straight into the battlefield. The final gambit. The enemy ships reacted immediately, plasma fire screaming past the Valor as it twisted and weaved between the carnage. They closed in on the largest Rothak dreadnought, a monstrous, heavily armored behemoth. Singh's hands flew over the controls. Locking onto their central command core, bypassing firewalls? I need 10 more seconds. They didn't have 10 seconds. An enemy warship turned, plasma cannons charging. Carson shouted, impact imminent. And then, breach confirmed. Singh cried out. The screens flickered. And then every single Rothak warship in range, shut down. For 3 whole seconds the battlefield went completely silent. Then one by one the hijacked Rothak ships rebooted. With human control. Voss exhaled slowly. Then in a voice of pure steel he said, This is Commander Elias Voss of the United Nations Fleet. The Rothak Armada is now under our control. Surrender or be annihilated. The enemy fleet froze. Because they had just realized the impossible had happened. Cliffhanger, the galactic response. The Rothak were no longer the masters of this battle. But somewhere deep in Council space, a dozen other alien species had just witnessed what humanity had done. And they were terrified. Because for the first time in history they realized the truth. Humans weren't just fighters. They were warlords. The silence didn't last. The moment of absolute stillness, where an entire Rothak armada hung in orbit, hijacked and frozen under human control, was shattered by a single transmission. A voice, cold and methodical, crackled through the comms. Humanity. Not an insult. Not a curse. Just a single word, spoken with terrifying clarity. Voss's stomach clenched as the main screen flickered to reveal a new figure. A different Rothak. Not High Warlord Korthus. This one was something far worse. The Overlord arrives. The creature on the screen was larger than any Rothak Voss had ever seen. It was taller, its scales darker, its armor adorned with sigils of conquest that had not been seen in 1,000 years. Carson inhaled sharply. No. Singh paled. That's... Voss already knew. Overlord Zarek. The supreme warlord of the entire Rothak Dominion. The monster that had conquered half the galaxy centuries ago. The one who had made entire species vanish. Voss had never seen him in person. Few had. And none had lived afterward. Overlord Zarek leaned forward, his reptilian eyes glowing with something Voss did not like. I am impressed. A slow, terrible smile crept across Zerika's face. But you have made one mistake. The horror unleashed. Every screen on the Valor flashed red. A warning siren shrieked. Singh's voice was pure terror. Sir, we're detecting. The lights flickered. And then, as Voss watched in growing horror, the stolen Rothak fleet began rebooting itself. Reclaiming control. What? Carson's hands flew over the console. How? We hijacked them. They shouldn't be able to. Zerika's grin widened. Did you really think we wouldn't prepare for you? Voss's blood ran cold. They had walked straight into a trap. The fall of the stolen fleet. One by one the Rothak warships turned. But not back to their original command. No. They turned against everyone. Even the remaining loyalist Rothak vessels. Because now they weren't Rothak ships anymore. They were Zerika's ships. Sir, they've activated a failsafe. Singh was yelling over the alarms. Some kind of contingency AI, they're purging all organic pilots and running on automated combat protocols. Voss barely heard her. He was watching every single stolen warship open fire. The bloodbath begins. The Yilthari homeworld below burned. The hijacked fleet, their fleet, began tearing through everything in sight. Human Yilthari Rothak, it didn't matter. The weapons they had turned against the Dominion were now firing indiscriminately, raining devastation across the battlefield. One of the Yilthari's last remaining orbital stations exploded as a hijacked battleship ripped it apart. Human ships were being torn to pieces as their own stolen forces turned on them. And the worst part? The Rothak were laughing. Overlord Zerika's voice slithered through the comms, rich with amusement. You humans are clever. But you are not gods. Voss gritted his teeth. They had tried to outplay the Rothak. And now they were about to lose everything. The last hope, a suicide mission. Options. Voss barked, trying to force his mind into battle mode. Singh's hands flew across the console. We can't regain control. They're running a full domination protocol. Voss refused to accept that. There had to be something. There was always something. Then he saw it. On the tactical display buried beneath the chaos was a single weak point. Control relay. The central hub for the entire fleet's new AI command system. It was located inside the largest dreadnought. Voss exhaled. There it was. Their only shot. And it was a suicide mission. The unthinkable choice. Carson, Voss said, turning to his weapons officer. I need you to prep a boarding team. Carson froze. Sir, you're not seriously thinking. Voss met his gaze. It's the only way. We get inside that dreadnought, we take out the command core, we shut this down. Singh's voice was tight. And if we fail? Voss didn't answer. Because failure meant extinction. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. Then from the comms a small voice spoke. We will go with you. Voss turned. It was Zarn. The Yilthari elder, his voice shaking but his resolve firm. Your people fight for us. We will fight for you. Voss felt something tighten in his chest. He nodded. The final gambit. The plan was reckless. Insane. Which meant it had a chance. Voss, Carson, and a team of elite human marines would breach the dreadnought. Zarn and his few surviving Yilthari warriors would follow. They would fight their way to the core. And then one way or another they would end this. Voss turned to the crew. Get us close. And tell the Rothak. He paused, then smiled grimly. Actually, don't tell them anything. Let them think they've won. For now. Cliffhanger, the boarding operation begins. The Valor surged forward, dodging plasma fire as it raced toward the enemy dreadnought. Inside, the strike team readied themselves. This was it. One last mission. One last fight. The doors to the drop bay slammed open. And Elias Voss stepped forward, his rifle in hand, eyes blazing. Move out. The boarding ramp slammed down. A blast of scorching plasma roared past Voss's head as he and his strike team stormed into the heart of the enemy dreadnought. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and ozone-charged death. Behind him, the last of the Yilthari warriors followed, their weapons crackling with raw energy. Zarn gripped his staff tightly, his 3 remaining soldiers moving in silent, grim determination. This was it. No reinforcements. No second chances. Just one shot to stop an extinction. And failure meant every last human in Yilthari would be erased from the galaxy. The maze of death. Voss motioned forward, and the team pressed on, moving fast through the nightmarish labyrinth of the dreadnought's interior. The corridors seethed with artificial red light, alarm klaxons howling like the death screams of a dying god. Then, movement. A hulking Rothak battle droid lurched out of the darkness, its mechanical frame glistening with fresh Yilthari blood. Saw them. And unleashed hell. A blistering wall of energy bolts screamed toward them. Voss dove for cover, his shoulders slamming against a bulkhead as return fire erupted from his team. Sing. We need a path. He barked into his comm. Sing's voice crackled back through the feed, urgency laced with fear. Sir, the AI is rewriting the ship's layout. Corridors are shifting in real time. You don't have a path. Pause. Then. You're going to have to make one. The impossible plan. Voss's mind worked at hyperspeed. There wasn't enough time. They needed to get to the AI core, but every route was a death trap. Unless. His gaze locked onto a sealed maintenance tunnel on their left. Carson followed his stare. Sir, that leads. Voss fired his weapon. A massive explosion ripped the sealed bulkhead apart, revealing a gaping hole into the ship's underbelly. A single glance at his team. We go through. No questions. No hesitation. Because they trusted him. And because there was no other way. They dove into the unknown. The deepest sacrifice. The maintenance shafts were a claustrophobic nightmare. The heat was unbearable. The walls groaned as the ship's systems fought against them. Then an alert blared. Voss checked his wrist display. And his blood ran cold. The ship was on a self-destruct countdown. Overlord Zarek had activated a failsafe. This was never just about stopping them. If he couldn't control the fleet, he would burn everything. Carson's face went pale. Sir, if we don't shut this AI down? Voss didn't let him finish. He already knew. They had 5 minutes. The final stand. Bursting from the tunnels, they finally reached the AI core. It loomed before them, a massive, pulsating construct of alien metal and shifting, living code. And in front of it stood the last of the Rothak enforcers. A dozen towering warriors, their blades gleaming, their eyes full of rage. Zarn stepped forward, clutching his ancient staff. And smiled. I believe this is where my people were meant to stand. Voss opened his mouth to protest. But Zarn was already moving. The last of the Yilthari charged. And died like legends. The last bullet. Voss and Carson fought like demons from a forgotten war. Blood sprayed. Armor cracked. Their team fell one by one. But they reached the core. Carson limped forward, coughing blood. Sir, this thing, how do we? Voss raised his rifle. One shot. One last bullet. He fired. The end of the war. The AI core shattered. The red glow died. The stolen fleet, all of it, froze mid-combat. Then, as if the universe itself had sighed in relief, they turned. Back to human control. The aftermath. On the Valor's bridge, Singh screamed in triumph as the fleet ripped through the Dominion forces. The Rothak broke. Overlord Zareka's image vanished from every screen. And humanity stood undefeated. The emotional payoff. Voss collapsed to his knees, staring at Zarn's broken form. The Yilthari elders smiled one last time. Thank you, he whispered. Then he was gone. But his people lived. Because humanity never abandons its own. And now the Yilthari were theirs. Family. Forever. The end.